Hey, welcome to the Owolabi podcast. It is good to have you back again. Now, today we're going to talk about something that I think is absolutely critical for your leadership. It's not necessarily a task that you need to perform, but it's a feeling that you'll inevitably have. So everyone who listens to this podcast tends to be a certain kind of person. You're a kind of person who wants to build something that matters. You want to do something with your life. You feel like you've been given talents, you've been given treasure, you've been given time to do something extraordinary. And maybe it's not extraordinary by the world's standards, but it's extraordinary by your standards. And you want to do something meaningful with your life. If that's you, then you're a good fit for this community. And here's the reality though. If you live with that sort of standard for your life, you will inevitably, always, every single time, hit a point where you don't achieve what you set out to do, where you will feel like you failed. And the truth is, for you and for me, when you're leading in a strong way, when you're leading at a high level, inevitably there comes a point where you just can't do it anymore, where you can't lead at that level every single time. The challenges get bigger, the waves get higher, things get more overwhelming, complexity just hits you every single day and you just can't keep up. And the truth is, for you and for me, what happens in those moments is that we feel overwhelmed, not by the thing in front of us. We feel overwhelmed by the expectation that we should be able to accomplish those things. See, being overwhelmed by expectation, that is a real feeling for people who are trying to build something that matters. Your expectations of where you would be at this point, your expectations on how many people would sign up, how many people would say yes, how many people would give you money, how many people would sign up for the product, or how many people would join your team, how many people would buy in. And when you have this situation where you are underperforming your own expectations, that can be a difficult place to be. In fact, you're probably having a hard time sleeping right now. If that's you, I'm really glad you're tuning in today because I got one thing to say to you. You're okay. Take a breath. You and me, buddy. Just take a deep breath. You are okay. Today, you're not tuning in on accident, and what I want to do is I want to give you some tips on how to deal with the feelings of being overwhelmed by your own expectations, feeling like you're not hitting the mark, not by anybody else's standards, by your standards. We're going to talk about that today, so I'm glad you're tuning in. So there's a couple things that you got to do when you have that feeling of being overwhelmed by your own expectations, when you feel like you're not getting to the place where you want to be in the time frame that you expected to be. You can address that feeling of being overwhelmed by first focusing on your own expectations, redefining your expectations. What do I mean by that? When I say redefining your expectations, what I mean is you've got to get to a place where you recognize that oftentimes if you're a high achiever and you're building something that matters, what you'll do, and I do this too, is you'll set a goal and you'll get close to the goal. And then you'll move the goalpost and you'll make it even more challenging. And you'll essentially keep moving the goalpost. And so you feel like you're always underperforming because the standards for yourself keep getting higher and higher and higher. So for you and for me, it's important to sit back and redefine your expectations. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? I remember one of the first times this happened to me. So Branches Worldwide, the organization that I lead, is an international consulting firm that works in 28 countries, right? And so it's something that I'm really proud of. We've worked really hard to get where we're at. The team is absolutely amazing. We feel like God's in it. It's just a lot of fun. But when we first started, man, it was hard. When we first started, you've watched any other podcasts before this or listened to podcasts before this, you've heard this story, but essentially, when you're in a position where you're trying to run or trying to start an international nonprofit, one of the things that you want to do is you want to make sure that you've traveled a little bit, that you've been around the world a couple times. I had not. In fact, I had been to exactly 2 countries up until when we actually started this thing. And so I remember going around to people and asking them for their financial support, asking them to back us financially and asking them to join the mission and da-da-da-da-da. And a lot of questions that people would give us would be, well, how many countries have you been to? And I was like, you mean counting the one I'm in right now, 2. And that was unbelievably embarrassing. I felt like an imposter most of the time. But I had high expectations. I felt like I could get it done. Even if no one believed that we could get it done, I felt like we really could grow this thing. So one day I got this tip of a potential business and a potential entrepreneur who could come on board with our mission on the other side of the world, literally in Thailand. And so I hopped on a plane and I went over to meet him. And it was amazing. I mean, he was exactly the kind of entrepreneur that we wanted to work with. He was a strong Christian, had an amazing business that was doing amazing impact in his community. It was great. And he was the kind of person that we wanted to partner with. And so I remember sitting down with him and saying, hey, here's what we offer. Here's why we do what we do. We think that you can be somebody who can really be an example to entrepreneurs all over the globe on how to build a business that blesses their communities. You could change the face of faith and entrepreneurship. We believe that you can do it, and we want to help you. And so we made this pitch. I made this pitch to him sitting across the table from him at this coffee shop. And here's a couple things I didn't realize. Number one, he had a good thing going. And there was zero incentive for him to join Branches, which I didn't really know that at the time. I kind of thought we were the best thing since sliced bread. But there was really no incentive for him to join. He had a good thing going. The second thing I didn't realize is that when you're in Thailand, and you're from Thailand, the way you tell somebody no, or the way you give someone bad news is very different than how you do it in the United States. And so I didn't know that. I'll tell you what happened here in a second. But I looked at him. I said, hey, would you be interested in joining Branches? And he asked me a couple clear questions. He said, all right, I might be interested, but tell me about yourself. Tell me about how many countries you've been to. And I said, you mean counting this one right now? 3? And then he said, oh, okay, all right. And you want to start this organization in 30 countries around the globe. Oh, okay, all right. Not a lot of experience. And then he said, well, tell me about your staff. How many people do you have on staff with you that are going to help you do this? And I'm like, oh, okay. You mean counting me? 1? And he's like, huh, okay, great. And then he did the thing that I didn't know that people in Thailand do, which is he said, hey, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. You've given me a lot to think about, and I'm gonna get back to you on this. And then we said goodbye, and I went back home. And then I messaged him when we got home, no response. I messaged him again, no response. Look, listen, I flew almost 24 hours one way to meet this guy, right? And then I flew back home, spent a ton of money just to get this guy on our team, the very first one. He was a great example of what we could do around the world. If I could bag this guy on our team, man, it was going to be huge. Message him a third time. Nothing. And then slowly, over the course of months, I started to realize this is how people in Thailand say no. They just slowly back away. There's no sort of overt like, no, I don't want to do this. Thanks, but no thanks. It's not like in the United States or other Western countries, and a lot of other countries do it this way, not just Thailand, but it was very, very like, you're going to understand that I don't want to have anything to do with you when you realize I have nothing to do with you. And that's when I figured it out. And I'm telling you, it hit me like a truck because I had nothing to show for all my effort. I had high expectations, and I was overwhelmed by the fact that I was not living up to my own expectations. You've ever been there before? I have. You see, the truth is what I needed to do is I needed to redefine my expectations. I needed to recognize that success isn't about perfection. Success is about progress. Success is about moving the ball down the field step by step by step. In fact, it's about learning. It's about getting better over time. And in fact, the experience I had with that guy in Thailand was all about me learning how to approach people. All about me learning how to start the story, all about me learning how to understand their position first and then recognize how we can step in and help them, understanding their pain point. We've talked about this before, grabbing a towel and saying, what are your problems? And then figuring out specifically how we can help, as opposed to saying, hey, we're the greatest thing since sliced bread. You should join our team. You know, there's things I had to learn, and the only way to learn that was going through some very, very embarrassing, frustrating, expensive mistakes. What if for you, you have to redefine your expectations? What if for you, the only way to get to the place where you believe you're supposed to go and the place that God has you to go, what if the only way to do that is to make some very silly, very expensive, very boneheaded mistakes along the way? There is no other path. If you knew there was no other way, well, then what would you do? You would start making mistakes as fast as you possibly could. Let's just get through these things as fast as we possibly could so that we can get to the good stuff. You wouldn't hang your head. You wouldn't quit along the way. You would recognize mistakes are part of the process. That's where a lot of people go wrong. In fact, there's some statistics specifically talking about that. All right, so here's a couple things you got to know. Number one, 20% of businesses fail within the first year. That's a fact. Number two, 50% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. That's another fact. Here's another one. 65% of businesses fail within the first 10 years. I mean, the chance of you surviving in a business the first 10 years is so incrementally low. It's unbelievable, right? 20% are gone within the first year. Another 50% are gone the last year. And then 65% are gone after 10 years. If you can make it to 10 years, man, you're doing great. But here's something you don't know. Entrepreneurs who start businesses after previously failing businesses before have an exponentially higher chance of succeeding. If you try again after you fail, your chances of succeeding go through the roof, right? Why is that? Because you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. Now you know what to do. Now you've made the mistakes. Now you're moving forward. And so you've got to redefine expectations. Failure isn't final. I mean, you know that old Winston Churchill quote, failure doesn't have to be fatal. It doesn't have to be final. It can be something that you can learn and grow from. And so for you and for me, it's important to get past that feeling of being overwhelmed by your expectations. You've got to redefine your expectations. Understand that failure is part of the process. Failure is an option. It's just one step along the way. Another way that people are overwhelmed by expectation is not so much when they're failing, but it's when they achieve success. Now, here's why. So when you're in a situation where you're achieving a lot of success and you know the reason why it's happening, it's because you are good. You're the one that's producing the thing. You are the economic engine. You're making it work and you've figured out the formula. What happens is the expectations then all come back to you. You're the one that's got to make it rain, especially if you're supporting staff and employees. You're the one that's got to make it rain. You're the one that's got to make things happen. And the default mode is to build a business, and you've heard this before, build the business around you. Build the church around you. Build everything around you because you're the one who can get it done. And everyone is there to just kind of wait for you to tell them what to do, and then they go do it. You're overwhelmed by your expectation to perform. And you realize this might not be sustainable. You cannot go on vacation without getting a ton of emails. You can't get sick without everything just falling apart. That's when you know that your own expectations for performance are overwhelming your life. And so when you're overwhelmed by expectations to perform, what do? Well, you recognize that every great business is built on other people. Every great business recognizes the value of building a team, not just based on you and based on them serving you. And I know that's not your intention, but sometimes that's how it comes across. It's not based on them serving you. It's based on them serving the mission and bringing their strengths to the table and doing things independently of you, but in service of the mission. Here's the thing. If you don't delegate, if you don't build your bench, if you don't have a group of people who understand the direction to go and they can operate autonomously apart from you, then you will forever limit the growth of your business. And you'll forever limit your own potential because you'll constantly be doing things that you're not qualified to do. You're constantly doing things that it's not the best use of your time. Let me give you a quick example of this when it hit me in a really personal way. It didn't happen to me, but I saw it. It was heartbreaking. There was an entrepreneur that we were working with a couple years ago, and he was a second generation owner of a company and, just great entrepreneurial guy, wanted to build new things, really good at what he did and made high quality buildings. I mean, absolutely amazing. And every major company that was building in our community was going after this guy to help build. I mean, he was absolutely amazing. He did such a phenomenal job. But what happened over time was that he was so good that people only went to him and they only wanted to work with, you got it, him. His signature on every check, his name on every building. He was supervising every part of the process because he knew he could do a good job, and that's what people were paying for. Now, there was a way for him to delegate, and there was a way for him to sort of offload the responsibility, but for some reason or another, he never trusted anybody. He didn't believe other people could do it, whatever. But he got to a position where he could not get away at all without the business falling apart. Can you imagine that? The success that he spent almost his whole life building is now this massive curse. You can't go to your daughter's ball game. You can't go on vacation. You've got a pile of money, but you can't go to Italy. You can't spend time with your spouse. You're working crazy hours. The success became a curse. And here's when it actually hit him. One day, he got sick. I mean, not just kind of sick, like terminal cancer sick. And he was in this position where he was trying to save his health and also salvage his business at the same time. And get this, he could not do both. He could not save his health and rest up the way he should and also save his business because he had to be there. Guess what happened? You wouldn't believe what he chose. He chose his business. There were days when he was supposed to be resting. There were days when he was supposed to be away, letting his body recover for the next treatment, and he couldn't because he's back at the office. He wore his body down. And over time, you guessed it, he passed away. Whatever treatment he was getting wasn't working. It couldn't work because he didn't give it a chance to work because he was tied to the business. He was overwhelmed by the expectations to produce, and he wasn't able to delegate. Then his family came to pick up the pieces afterwards, and nobody knew anything. Nobody knew how to run the business. Nobody knew all the contracts. Nobody knew where to, which bank accounts, there were. Nobody knew anything because there was nothing there. Everything was in his head. And that was the sad part because he's building this business to pass it on to the next generation. And when he did pass, the next generation had almost nothing. Now, it's a sad story. I get it. And I'm sorry if I ruined your day with a really sad story. But the point is real. And the point is, look, you feel overwhelmed by expectations potentially because you're the one that's producing. But getting to a place where you learn to delegate and build your bench is really critical. There's a lot of different ways that you can delegate. But here's one thing you can do right now to really start identifying how to delegate. This is one thing you can do. You can start by writing down all the things that you do. Everything that you do on a given day. If it's a busy day, write down every single thing that you do. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go in and I want you to circle 3 things that only you can do. 3 things that only you can do. And those 3 things that you circle that only you can do, those have to be 3 things that you love to do, that you really love to do. When you find the things that only you love to do and the things that you also enjoy, now you have a list of things that have to belong to you. Everything else, you've got to find a person to do it. You've got to train somebody. You got to hand it off. You've got to automate it. You've got to hire somebody. You've got to do whatever you can, but you've got to start working in the direction of handing it off to people. There's a lot of different ways to delegate, but the very first thing to do is setting a direction and saying, okay, this is not sustainable. I can't do this on my own. I'm overwhelmed by my own expectations, and I am sinking this business. I'm sinking this church. I'm sinking this organization. It's really critical for me to start leading at a high level. I've got to let some things go and delegate. So there's a lot of different ways that you and I can feel overwhelmed by expectations. You know this, I know this. And feeling overwhelmed by expectations happens sometimes where you set incorrect expectations and you don't put progress and you focus on perfection. Sometimes it's your own productivity gets you to a place where you have unbelievable expectations on your output and there's just no way it's sustainable and you've got to make some real choices about delegation. Sometimes feeling overwhelmed is really honestly just a feeling. It's a moment when you feel like you are just absolutely underwater and you can't figure out which way to go, what to do. And you just have so many things that you don't know how to solve, so many problems you don't know how to solve, and you don't have enough time to fix it. So what do you do when you're just overwhelmed with emotion? What do you do when you're overwhelmed with the expectations of the moment? Well, here's a couple things that you can do. Number one, it's really important that you get clarity. And so you've got to sit down and you've got to write down all the things that you have to do that day. Just write them down. Pause, cancel meetings, whatever you have to do, but dedicate time to get everything in your mind that you have to do on paper. Just get it down or on notes in your Apple Notes, whatever. Just get it down somewhere where you can see it, right? That's the first thing. After that, you start prioritizing and you start putting things in order based on things that are urgent and based on things that are important. The urgent things oftentimes are the things that you actually feel like you have to do right now. But the truth is, it's not going to gain a lot of traction in the long term. It's just going to make you feel like you're checking something off the box. Sometimes just checking email. It feels like it's urgent, but it's not all that important. One of my favorite authors, Rory Vaden, says you should spend time on things today that make you time tomorrow, which means when you start focusing on things that are important, what it means is you're focusing on things that are actually going to extend your time as a leader, focusing on things that are actually going to give you more time in the future, the things that are multipliers. If I do this, it's going to move our business, our church, my family forward exponentially. And that's the area that you start spending your most time in. So you understand how to separate the urgent from the important. That's a really big deal. But let me give you one big piece that's important when you feel overwhelmed. you've got to take care of yourself. Let me say this again. If you're building something that matters and you want to make a difference with your life as a leader, you've got to take care of yourself. No one is going to advocate for your health but you. Nobody knows that you're feeling depressed but you. Nobody knows that you're falling apart on the inside but you. You, and I'm going to borrow a phrase from one of my favorite friends, Henry Cloud, you are ridiculously responsible for your own life. Means no one's going to swoop in one day and say, hey, you look like you're falling apart on the inside. You have got to prioritize that yourself. So what do I do when I feel overwhelmed? I'll tell you, the very first thing I do when I feel overwhelmed, I start canceling some meetings. I understand this, say sorry to some people. I go exercise. That's the very first thing I do. For some reasons, it's a way to reset myself and say, I am taking time for me, because the best thing I bring to any situation in leadership is myself. The best thing I bring to any situation is myself. Let me say it one more time. The best thing I bring to any situation is a healthy Dan. And so by taking care of my health, it means I'm serving other people. By taking care of me, when I feel overwhelmed, it means I'm actually bringing my best in other situations. And so if you let your body fall apart, or you let your mental health fall apart, you let your intellect fall apart, you let your spiritual life fall apart, you're doing no one a service. In fact, in the long term, you're just going to feel more overwhelmed by the expectations that are on you. So the very first thing to do when you feel overwhelmed by the feeling of all those expectations on you, you pause. You make a list. You separate the list into urgent and into important. You look at the list of the important things, and you only do the things that help you multiply your time, and you take care of yourself. You fill your tank first before you fill other people's. Now, here's the last thing to do when you feel overwhelmed by expectations. Again, you've got high expectations for your life, and you're also a high achiever. So you are working your tail off. You're not just dreaming about what could be. You're actually working towards it. Maybe you've been disappointed along the way. Maybe you don't have all the help around you and you feel like you're overworked. Maybe you have that acute moment of feeling like you're overwhelmed and you're not sure what to do today. But here's something you can do in general, as a general rule, to help you become the kind of person that can deal with expectations that you don't meet, or deal with moments when you feel overwhelmed. Give yourself grace. It's not a race. You're called to do something specific, and it will happen in the time that it happens. You're going to experience disappointments along the way. It's part of the learning process. And so your ability to give yourself grace while holding high standards and saying, I'm learning, I'm growing, I will get there. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in the time frame that I expected, but I'm learning and growing. That will do wonders for your leadership. Not only will that make you a little bit better as a leader and a little bit kinder to yourself, but you'll turn around and you'll do that to your staff, to the people around you. You'll take the pressure off of them, because they'll see that, look, it's okay to make mistakes and learn. Not make the same mistake twice, but make mistakes and learn. And recognize we're getting better over time. And that's the best way to grow, by giving ourselves grace every step of the way. It's not a race. You can celebrate progress. You can pause and you can take your family out to eat and say, hey, today was a great day. I learned a lot. And you can celebrate real progress. This actually happened to me the other day. So I might have said this to you before, but I'm finishing a doctorate in leadership. I'm absolutely thrilled by it. And it has been one of the hardest things I ever expected. Multiple times along the way, I felt stupid. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't know this. What is wrong with me? Like, there's moments where I felt absolutely defeated and overwhelmed by my own expectations on how I would be doing at that point. But recently, I just got to a place where there's this major milestone. I'm not done yet, but I'm at this major milestone, and I stopped. I took my entire family out to eat, and I just said, hey, look, I just got to this milestone. I want to thank you for your sacrifice in helping me get there. I'm showing myself grace, recognizing I'm not there yet, but I've made good progress. And I'm showing them grace by saying, thank you for helping me along the way. We're not there yet, but thank you for your effort up to this point. They've sacrificed a lot for me, and it's important to thank them along the way. You have to do that for yourself. You have to do that for your team. You have to pause every now and then and say, okay, this isn't going as great as we expected, but it is going, and we are learning. And it's important to give ourselves grace. It's not a race. We'll get there when we get there. So bottom line, if you're a high achiever, 100%, you are going to have moments where you feel overwhelmed by your own expectations. You're going to put your head on the pillow at night and you're going to say, I thought I'd be further along than this. I did not think I'd be making so many boneheaded, expensive mistakes. I didn't realize that it was going to be this hard. You're going to feel overwhelmed by your own expectations on how things should be. And so when there's a gap between your expectations and your experience, what you can do is you can fill it with grace. You could recognize that you're a work in progress, that you're getting better, that you can still have high expectations while also giving yourself a little bit of grace along the way. So you celebrate the progress that you're making. You delegate when it's appropriate. You make lists and you prioritize the things that only you can do. And you do the things that help multiply your time in the future. And ultimately, you recognize that, hey, it's okay to make mistakes. I'm getting better along the way and I will get this done. I'm not going to quit. I'm just going to give myself grace. Hey, it's been a great podcast today. Now, I'm going to tell you something you already know. If this stuck out to you, if something was meaningful for you, hey, help the rest of the community and put something in the comments. Make sure that everybody understands a little bit more about what you learned from this, and maybe they'll go back and they'll listen and they'll hear something that might actually help them as well. But hey, make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already done this. We've got a community of people who are all trying to achieve something incredible. Until the next time, go build something that matters.